I'm Tessa, and just like anyone else, I thought I knew my family, especially my grandfather, Richard. He was a man of many secrets, but I had never expected his last one would unravel my understanding of him entirely. The day of his funeral, I sat among family members, all of us cloaked in black, holding back tears and pretending to be strong. We were there to honor a man whose life was a tapestry of stories, but little did I know that the most shocking tale was about to unfold right in front of me. As I sat in the wooden pew, my heart raced not just from grief, but from an unexpected feeling that something was off. Something about the atmosphere felt charged, like static in the air before a thunderstorm. I glanced around at my relatives, their faces a mix of sadness and something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Was it greed? Discomfort? Or perhaps anticipation? I couldn't shake the feeling that we were all waiting for something significant to happen. When my grandfather passed, he left behind an estate that included a modest house filled with memories, a few pieces of art, and a small savings account. My mother had been his closest confidant, and we all assumed she would inherit everything. But there was a whisper among the relatives that maybe, just maybe, there was more to uncover. I brushed off the notion as mere speculation, but a curious part of me couldn't help but wonder, did he leave anything else behind? As the service went on, I felt a pull toward the front, where the casket lay, adorned with flowers and memories. I was lost in thought when my aunt, Marlene, stood to speak. Her voice trembled as she recounted a story from their childhood, but I barely heard her. My mind was racing, thinking about my grandfather and the little nuances of his life, the stories he shared about his youth, the tales of his travels, and the words of wisdom that seemed to come from nowhere. They all painted a picture of a man I adored, yet a man I realized I didn't fully understand. Suddenly, my mother leaned over and whispered, "Tessa, could you grab the funeral program from the table?" I nodded, but as I turned, a strange instinct washed over me. I needed to look closely at that program. It wasn't just about the order of service. It felt like a clue waiting to be discovered. As I reached for the program, I noticed that it was slightly heavier than expected. It felt as if it contained more than just paper. My fingers grazed the edges, and I pulled it closer to my chest, curiosity getting the better of me. The service continued, and I could hear my grandfather's favorite hymn being sung in the background. But my mind was elsewhere. I flipped through the pages, skimming over the words that spoke of love and loss, until something caught my eye. A folded piece of paper slipped out, and instinctively, I tucked it into my pocket. I remember feeling my heart race, a mixture of excitement and dread, filling the pit of my stomach. What could be hidden in that paper? Was it a letter? A final message? Or possibly something more? Something that would change everything I thought I knew. As the ceremony concluded, I felt the weight of everyone's eyes on me. The family began to disperse, some heading toward the reception, others lingering to share their condolences. But I was frozen, lost in the moment, clutching that program like a lifeline. I finally found a quiet corner, away from the bustle, and with trembling hands, I pulled out the folded paper. The moment I unfolded it, a rush of adrenaline coursed through me. There it was, a typewritten document, crisp and official-looking. I scanned the words, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a will, but not the one my mother had shown us. It was dated just a week before his death, and contained stipulations I had never heard of. I felt the room spin as I read through the clauses. My grandfather had left specific instructions about his estate, and tucked in the details was a name that sent chills down my spine. My name. Was I reading this correctly? My mind raced back to the conversations we'd had, the moments we'd shared. He had spoken to me about dreams, passions, and the importance of family, but I never imagined that he'd include me in his final wishes in such a significant way. As I stood there, grappling with the reality of what I'd just discovered, my mother walked into the room, her face a mixture of confusion and concern. "Tessa, are you okay?" she asked, looking at me with wide eyes. I didn't know how to respond. Should I tell her? Should I reveal the existence of this hidden will? Would it cause a rift in our family? The questions flooded my mind, each one more pressing than the last. What would you have done? I thought to myself, feeling the weight of my grandfather's legacy pressing down on my shoulders. Taking a deep breath, I made a decision. I would stand up and read it aloud, right then and there, to the gathered family. I needed them to hear his final words, just as I had. The moment felt monumental, and I was about to step into a role I never anticipated taking. Little did I know, the moment I spoke those words, everything would change. My heart raced as I clutched the funeral program in my hands, feeling the cool paper against my sweaty palms. I glanced at my mother, whose expression shifted from confusion to concern as she caught the intensity in my gaze. The air in the room felt thick, charged with unspoken tension. "Tessa," she prompted gently, stepping closer. I could see her searching my face for answers, but all I could think about was the weight of my grandfather's words, how they had brought clarity amid the chaos of grief. "I found something," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but loud enough to draw the attention of those nearby. My aunts, uncles, and cousins turned their heads, curiosity etched on their faces. "It's in the program," I continued, my heart pounding like a drum. "It's about Grandpa's will." Gasps filled the room, shock rippling through the gathering. My mother's eyes widened, and I could sense her concern deepening. "Tessa, what are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling. I stood up straight, forcing myself to muster the courage I needed. I think he wanted us to know something important." There was a moment of silence as everyone processed my words. I could feel the weight of their stares, the mix of skepticism and intrigue. "Just read it," my cousin Jake urged, leaning forward, his curiosity piqued. I could see the anticipation in his eyes, mirrored by the rest of the family. It was now or never. This was my chance to honor my grandfather's memory in a way that would resonate with everyone he loved. I opened the program, my fingers trembling slightly as I turned to the page where the will was written. The words danced before my eyes, but I forced myself to focus. "I, Harold Thompson, being of sound mind," I began, my voice steadying with each word. As I read, the lines became clearer, the meaning behind them richer and more profound. The room fell silent, the only sounds being my voice and the occasional sniffle from someone trying to suppress their emotions. "To my beloved family, I leave not just my possessions, but the lessons I've learned, the love I've shared, and the memories we've created together." My heart swelled as I continued, feeling the connection to him grow stronger with every sentence. "In my absence, I want you to remember that family is the most important legacy of all. I urge you to cherish one another, to support each other through the good and the bad. Life is fleeting, and love is the only thing that truly matters." Each word resonated deeply, weaving through the fabric of our shared grief and nostalgia. I could see tears forming in my mother's eyes, and I felt my own welling up, threatening to spill over. "To Tessa," I read aloud, "I leave my favorite pocket watch. May it remind you of our time together and encourage you to chase your dreams." I paused, allowing those words to sink in. The pocket watch. I had always admired it, its intricate design and the way it had been passed down through generations. I could almost picture him winding it, the way his hands moved with such care and love. "He really thought of me," I whispered to myself, the realization hitting me like a wave. The room was enveloped in a mix of somber reflections and shared memories. My family sat in silence, each of them processing the message in their own way. I continued, "To my children, I leave my home. It is a safe haven filled with laughter and love. May you always find solace within its walls." The warmth of those words enveloped us, as if he were wrapping us in a comforting embrace from beyond. As I finished reading, I closed the program and looked up to see a mixture of expressions on my family's faces: grief, nostalgia, and a flicker of hope. My mother was staring at me, her eyes glistening. "I can't believe he did this," she finally said, her voice shaky. He always had a way of knowing what was needed, even in his absence. I nodded, feeling a surge of warmth from my grandfather. "He loved us, Mom. This is his way of reminding us to stick together." My words hung in the air, and I could see the realization dawning on each family member, illuminating their expressions. "I can't believe he left you the watch," my Aunt Linda said, her voice tinged with admiration. "He always said you were his favorite. There was a mixture of laughter and tears, the tension slowly dissipating as my family began to share their own memories, stories of my grandfather's wisdom and humor. "It makes sense," my Uncle Tom added, a soft smile breaking through his sorrow. "He always believed in you, Tessa. This is his way of saying he's proud." The conversations flowed, each story serving as a bridge to connect the past and present. I felt a sense of catharsis, the heaviness of grief lifting ever so slightly as we shared laughter amid tears. My grandfather's spirit was alive in that room, woven into every word spoken and every memory shared. As we reflected on his life, I realized this was more than just a will. It was an invitation to strengthen our bonds, to hold on to each other a little tighter. It was a reminder that even in death, he continued to guide us, lighting the way with the love he had always shown. In that moment, surrounded by family, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I would cherish that pocket watch, but more importantly, I would honor my grandfather's legacy by keeping our family connected, just as he had wanted. As the conversations began to wind down, I noticed the sun dipping lower in the sky, casting a warm golden hue across the room. It felt like the perfect backdrop for the memories we were creating. I glanced around at my family, each person wrapped in their own thoughts yet united in our shared grief. The laughter faded, and the weight of loss settled back in, though it felt a little lighter now, as if the stories we shared had created a cushion of love around us. "Let's take a moment, just to breathe," my Aunt Sarah suggested, her voice soft and steady. We all nodded, falling into a comfortable silence that felt both heavy and healing. I could hear the clock ticking in the background, a steady reminder of time passing, of moments fleeting. It made me think about my grandfather's lessons on time, how he always urged us to savor each moment, to be present. As I sat there, a thought struck me. What if there was something more to uncover? The will had hinted at surprises, and my curiosity ignited a spark within me. I shifted in my seat, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through me. What if my grandfather had left more than just the pocket watch? What if there were secrets buried within his life, waiting for someone brave enough to dig them up? "Hey, everyone," I started, feeling the weight of their gazes on me. "What if there's more to his will than what we've read? I mean, he was always full of surprises." A few heads nodded, and my Uncle Tom leaned forward. "What do you mean, Tessa?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I just think he wouldn't want to leave things simply to chance. Maybe there are more treasures or messages hidden. You know how he loved puzzles." A flicker of intrigue passed through the room. I could see my family's gears turning, the realization settling in that my grandfather's legacy might be richer than we anticipated. We began to brainstorm, each idea sparking another. "What if there's a hidden letter?" my cousin Lily suggested. "Or a treasure map." The thought brought a smile to my face. I could imagine my grandfather sitting with a twinkle in his eye, plotting out the final adventure for us. "Let's look through his things," I proposed, the excitement bubbling over. "We should check the attic, the garage, everywhere." My Aunt Sarah's face lit up with enthusiasm. "I have a feeling there's something there. He always kept things that mattered." The energy in the room shifted from mourning to a determined quest. We were no longer just a family grieving the loss of a beloved man. We were a team, ready to honor his memory by uncovering whatever treasures he had left behind. After the memorial, we decided to meet again the following weekend. I spent the entire week in a state of anticipation, my mind racing with possibilities. What could we find? What secrets had my grandfather left? The thought of uncovering more about him filled me with a sense of purpose. It felt like I was on the brink of discovering a piece of history, not just for myself, but for my entire family. When the day arrived, the sun shone brightly, illuminating the dust particles dancing in the air as we gathered in my grandparents' home. The familiar scent of wood polish and memories enveloped us as we made our way to the attic, a place I hadn't visited in years. It felt as if we were entering another world, one filled with forgotten treasures and memories waiting to be rediscovered. As I climbed the creaky stairs, my heart raced. I remembered the stories my grandfather told about this attic, how he spent countless hours up here, crafting and creating. The door creaked open, and the sight that greeted me was a beautiful chaos. Boxes stacked high, old furniture draped in sheets, and shelves lined with knickknacks that told 1,000 stories. We began sifting through the boxes, laughter and excitement filling the air. My cousin Lily found an old baseball glove, while my Uncle Tom unearthed vintage photographs that captured moments of joy. Each discovery felt like a piece of my grandfather's essence, a reminder of the life he had lived and the love he had shared. As we dug deeper, I stumbled upon a dusty box tucked away in the corner. It was small and unassuming, covered in cobwebs. My heart raced as I pulled it out, wiping away the grime. Could this be it? I glanced around at my family, their eyes gleaming with curiosity. "Guys, check this out," I exclaimed, my voice barely containing my excitement. They gathered around me as I slowly opened the box. Inside were various items, old letters, postcards, and a few trinkets that held their own stories. But then, at the bottom, something caught my eye. A folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. I carefully picked it up, feeling the weight of its significance. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, revealing my grandfather's neat handwriting. "To my dear family," it began, and my heart swelled. As I read through the letter, I felt his presence surrounding me, as if he were right there, guiding me. He spoke of love, resilience, and the importance of family bonds. It wasn't just a message. It was a testament to the life he had lived and the legacy he wished to pass on. In that moment, I understood. This was what he had wanted, to remind us that even in our grief, we could find joy and connection. We could discover the beauty of our shared history and continue to create new memories together. As my family gathered closer, I could see their eyes glistening with emotion, the power of his words resonating in each of us. I realized then that my journey wasn't just about uncovering hidden treasures. It was about embracing the love and lessons my grandfather had left behind. It was about continuing his story, ensuring that it would live on through us. And as I looked around at my family, I knew we were ready to carry that legacy forward, one story at a time. The room felt charged with an energy that was almost palpable. I could see the shift in my family's expressions, their grief momentarily set aside as they absorbed the heartfelt words of my grandfather. It was as if a light had been turned on in the dim corners of our sadness. We were connected by the shared experience of loss, yes, but also by the shared understanding of his love and the lessons he had imparted. With the letter still clutched in my hand, I took a moment to gather my thoughts. Each word echoed in my mind, not just as a farewell, but as a rallying cry to each of us. My grandfather had a way of weaving his wisdom into simple phrases, and even in his absence he was still guiding us. "Remember to cherish the moments, no matter how small," had been one of his favorite sayings. I couldn't shake that thought. This was a moment, a significant one. We were here together, united not only by our sorrow, but by a legacy that demanded to be honored. I felt compelled to share more than just the letter. "You know, he always had a plan," I started, looking into the faces of my family. He was the kind of man who believed in leaving something behind for the people he loved. "I think this letter is just the beginning." My cousin Sarah, who had always been the family skeptic, raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? You think there's more?" I nodded. I can't shake the feeling that there's something else. Maybe more letters, or even something physical. I mean, he was meticulous with everything. Remember how he organized his tools? What if he did the same with his affairs? A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, and I could see the spark of curiosity igniting in their eyes. My Uncle Mike, who had been sitting quietly, finally spoke up. "If that's true, we should look for it. He wouldn't have left us hanging. He wanted us to know he was still with us, guiding us." With renewed determination, we decided to comb through the house together, starting from the attic where my grandfather had spent countless hours tinkering and crafting. I felt a rush of nostalgia as I climbed the creaking stairs, memories flooding back of him, teaching me how to build a birdhouse, his hands steady and patient as he guided mine. The attic was a treasure trove of memories. Old trunks filled with dusty toys, boxes stacked high with faded photographs, and shelves lined with jars of screws and nails. As we rummaged through the clutter, I couldn't help but share stories about each item I stumbled upon. It was therapeutic, and it brought us closer as we laughed and reminisced about the good times. Then, amidst the chaos, I spotted a weathered box tucked away in a dark corner. It was small, wooden, and intricately carved with symbols that looked familiar. My heart raced as I pulled it into the light. "Guys, look at this," I exclaimed. My family's attention shifted to me, and I felt a wave of excitement wash over the room. "What is it?" Sarah asked, stepping closer. I brushed the dust off the top and examined the carvings. I think this was his. I gently opened the box, and inside, there were old photographs, some letters, and a small folded piece of paper. My hands shook as I unfolded it, revealing a handwritten note. It read, "To whoever finds this, know that my love for you is eternal. Seek, and you shall find what brings you joy." I looked up, my heart pounding. This is it. This is what he wanted us to do. To continue the search, to find what brings us joy. My Uncle Mike chuckled softly. "Sounds like a treasure hunt to me." "Exactly," I said, feeling the excitement bubbling in my chest. "Let's make a plan. We can divide up the tasks, search the house room by room, and see what else we can find." The energy in the room shifted once again, filled with a sense of purpose. One by one, we began sharing our ideas for how to search through my grandfather's belongings. We could look for more letters, more clues, anything that might lead us to hidden treasures or memories he wanted us to uncover. As we began our search, I felt a sense of unity forming among us. Each box we opened, each photograph we examined, sparked conversations that drew us closer together. Stories that had been dormant for years began to flow, laughter mingling with tears as we remembered the man who had shaped our lives in so many ways. We worked tirelessly through the day, fueled by our shared mission and the love we felt for my grandfather. It was exhausting, but every moment felt significant. I realized that this search wasn't just about finding material possessions. It was about rediscovering who we were as a family, about connecting through the stories that shaped us. As evening settled in, we gathered back in the living room, the remnants of our search scattered around us. I looked at my family, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of hope. It was more than just uncovering hidden treasures. It was about celebrating a legacy, forging new connections, and understanding the importance of family. I realized then that the journey of discovery had just begun, and I couldn't wait to see where it would lead us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the windows, the atmosphere in the room shifted. I caught glimpses of my family members, each one lost in their own thoughts, reflecting on the day we had just shared. The laughter had faded, replaced by a comfortable silence, yet I could feel an undercurrent of anticipation. What would we uncover next? What secrets lay buried in the items we had yet to explore? I knew that my grandfather had lived a full life, one rich with stories and experiences that shaped not only him, but all of us. With this newfound sense of connection, my heart swelled with the need to dig deeper. I stood up and walked over to the boxes we had yet to open. My fingers traced the edges of an old dusty trunk that seemed to call to me, almost as if it held the answers we sought. With a quick glance back at my family, who were now engaged in quiet conversations, I knelt down and flipped the latch. The trunk creaked open, revealing a mishmash of items, clothes that looked like they belonged to a different era, letters tied with faded ribbon, and a small wooden box that seemed to glimmer even in the dim light. I set the box aside for the moment and continued to sift through the trunk. Among the clothes, I found a military uniform that took my breath away. It was meticulously preserved, the fabric still holding the scent of my grandfather's cologne. I couldn't help but picture him as a young man, ready to serve his country, full of hopes and dreams. This tangible piece of history made me feel more connected to him than I had ever felt before. As I pulled out the letters, I noticed they were addressed to my grandmother. The elegant handwriting danced across the pages, each word dripping with affection. I read snippets aloud to my family, my voice wavering with emotion. It was like stepping into their world, witnessing a love story that had weathered the storms of life. I could see my grandmother's smile in my mind, feel the warmth of their shared laughter. My family gathered around, drawn in by the love that echoed from those words. We shared stories about my grandparents, how they met, the life they built together. It felt as though we were knitting together the fabric of our family history, one thread at a time. I felt the significance of these moments sink in. Every letter, every photograph, every piece of clothing was a reminder of where we came from and who we were. After we finished with the trunk, I turned my attention to the small wooden box I had set aside. It was intricately carved, adorned with swirls and patterns that hinted at something special inside. My heart raced as I carefully lifted the lid. Inside, I discovered a collection of small trinkets, each one a story waiting to be told. There were tiny figurines, a compass, and a delicate locket that caught the light just right. As I held the locket in my palm, I felt a rush of emotions. It was heavier than I had expected, its surface cool against my skin. I opened it slowly, revealing two small photographs, one of my grandfather as a young man, and another of a woman I didn't recognize. I turned to my family, my brow furrowing in curiosity. "Do you know who this is?" I asked, holding up the locket. They leaned in, studying the image closely, and then shook their heads. "I have no idea," my cousin said, a hint of intrigue in her voice. Could it be someone from his past? I couldn't help but wonder. Had my grandfather harbored secrets that he had never shared with us? I carefully placed the locket back in the box, my mind racing with possibilities. It was a reminder that every person has layers, stories hidden beneath the surface, and perhaps my grandfather was no different. As the night wore on, we continued to delve into the treasures we had found. Each box opened seemed to reveal not just items, but pieces of our family's identity. I began to see my grandfather not just as the man I had known, but as a young boy with dreams, a soldier with courage, and a husband who loved fiercely. The clock ticked softly in the background, but the hours passed unnoticed as we shared stories, laughter, and even a few tears. It felt therapeutic, like a weight was being lifted off our shoulders. We were weaving a tapestry of memories, each thread colored by the emotions we felt for one another and for the legacy we were uncovering. At one point, my aunt brought out a photo album, its cover worn from years of handling. As she flipped through the pages, we were transported back in time, drawn into the world of my grandfather's youth. Each image sparked a discussion, revealing moments we had never known, family gatherings, vacations, and celebrations that felt both foreign and familiar. I couldn't shake the thought of the woman in the locket from my mind. Who was she? What was her connection to my grandfather? It gnawed at me, and I realized that as much as we were uncovering our family's past, there were still mysteries that remained unsolved. As the night came to an end, I found myself feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and longing. We had shared so much, but I knew this journey was far from over. The more we uncovered, the more questions seemed to arise. The search for answers had ignited a fire within me, one that I was determined to pursue. As I climbed into bed that night, I couldn't help but smile at the thought of the connections we had forged. I was grateful for the chance to explore my grandfather's life alongside my family, but I also felt an urgency to dig deeper. I had to know more about the secrets that lay hidden within his past. The next day would bring new challenges, more discoveries, and perhaps even more surprises. I closed my eyes, my mind racing with possibilities, knowing that our family's story was still being written. The morning light poured in through my bedroom window, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. I blinked awake, feeling as though I were emerging from a dream. My heart raced with anticipation for the day ahead. The locket and its mystery still hung heavily in my thoughts. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and felt the cool floor beneath my feet, grounding me in reality. Today, I had a plan. I needed to confront my mother, dig deeper into the stories we had collected, and find out more about the woman in the locket. I made my way to the kitchen, where the smell of coffee filled the air. My mother was already up, her back turned to me as she stirred something in a pot on the stove. She looked comfortable in her morning routine, but I could sense an undercurrent of tension. As I poured myself a cup of coffee, I considered how best to approach her about my discoveries. I wanted to ask about the locket, about the funeral program, and about the will that was hidden there. "Morning, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Good morning, sweetie. Did you sleep okay?" she replied, turning to face me. I could see the traces of worry etched on her face, and my heart ached for her. We were both navigating this maze of grief and memory together. I did. Thanks. I've been thinking a lot about Grandpa and the stories he left behind, I said carefully. Her eyes flickered with interest, but also a hint of apprehension. What stories? I took a deep breath, deciding to dive in. The locket I found at the funeral. The woman inside it. Do you know who she is? My mother hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. I think she might be someone important, but it's complicated. Complicated. That word echoed in my mind as I watched her struggle for the right words. What do you mean by complicated? She sighed, and I could see the weight of years pressing down on her. Your grandfather had a life before he met your grandmother. There were things he never spoke about. Secrets he held close. Secrets? What kind of secrets? Things that could change how we see him, she whispered, almost to herself. I felt a surge of determination. If my grandfather had a past filled with stories, some beautiful, some painful, I needed to know them all. Mom, I want to understand. I think it's important. For both of us. She turned to me, her eyes glistening. You're right, and I'm sorry I haven't shared more. It's just, I'm not sure how to start. Let's start with what we know, I urged, feeling the urgency build within me. What did Grandpa tell you about his past? My mother took a deep breath and leaned against the counter, her eyes distant as she recalled memories. He always talked about growing up during a difficult time. He lost his father when he was young, and his mother struggled to keep the family together. There were stories of hardship, but also of love and resilience. Did he ever mention this woman? I asked, gesturing towards the locket that I had placed on the kitchen table. No, not directly. He would often speak fondly of his childhood friends, but he never shared much about anyone else. I thought it was just his way of coping. I nodded, absorbing this new information. What about the funeral program? The will was hidden there. Did you know about it? Her face paled. No, I didn't. I thought everything was taken care of. My heart raced at the implications. If there was a will hidden in the program, it might hold answers to questions we hadn't yet considered. We need to look at it, Mom. It could reveal more about him, about what he wanted for us. I suppose we should, she said hesitantly. But it's just so overwhelming. I get it. But we're in this together, right? Let's face it head on. She looked at me, and for a moment I could see the flicker of hope and resolve in her eyes. Okay, let's do it. After breakfast, we moved to the living room, where my grandfather's funeral program lay on the coffee table, a simple document that felt heavy with significance. I opened it carefully, my fingers trembling slightly as I turned the pages. The program was filled with details about his life, the people who had loved him, and the memories we had all shared. But it was the last page that drew my attention. There, in the corner, was an envelope, thin and unassuming, but it sent a jolt of electricity through me. Mom, look, I exclaimed, pointing it out. Her eyes widened as I gingerly pulled it from the program. What do you think is inside? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, but we need to find out. I carefully opened the envelope, revealing a single sheet of paper. My heart raced as I unfolded it. It was a handwritten note, the familiar scrawl of my grandfather's handwriting unmistakable. My eyes darted over the words, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. As I read the note aloud, I could feel the weight of every word settling in the air between us. It was a message to us, a glimpse into his heart and mind that had been hidden for far too long. To my beloved family, I began, my voice trembling. If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. I want you to know that my love for you all was the greatest treasure of my life. I paused, glancing at my mother, who was now teary-eyed and leaning in closer, eager for every word. There are things I left unsaid, and I hope you will find the courage to seek the truth of our family's history. There are connections that are deeper than you may realize. The locket you found holds more than just a memory. It holds a part of my past that I never had the strength to reveal. Seek her out, and you will understand more than I could ever explain. I stopped reading, the weight of the moment crashing over us. I could hardly process what I had just read. My grandfather's words were a call to action, urging us to uncover the secrets that had lingered in the shadows of our family for so long. What did he mean? My mother whispered, her voice trembling. I think he wanted us to know about the woman in the locket, I replied, my heart racing with excitement and fear. He wanted us to understand his past. What do we do now? She asked, her eyes wide with a mixture of dread and anticipation. I took a deep breath, the air thick with possibility. We find her. At that moment, I felt a sense of purpose ignite within me. Our family's journey was just beginning, and the answers we sought were waiting to be uncovered. I could feel my heart pounding as the words hung in the air, filled with potential and uncertainty. The idea of finding this woman, the one linked to my grandfather's past, filled me with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Who was she? What role had she played in his life? And more importantly, how would her story intertwine with ours? I glanced at my mother, who seemed lost in thought, her gaze distant as if she was peering into a world long forgotten. Okay, she finally said, breaking the silence. But how do we even start? We don't even know her name. I had been thinking the same thing, but I was determined not to let fear hold us back. We have his journal. There might be clues in there. Maybe he mentioned her somewhere. Or perhaps there's something else we can dig into. My mother nodded, her face lighting up with a spark of hope. Right. Let's go through it again. There has to be more. We sat down at the old oak table, the journal open before us, its pages yellowed and frayed with age. As I flipped through the entries, I felt a connection to the man whose words I was reading. It was as if he was guiding us, encouraging us to keep searching. Here, I said after a few moments, pointing to a passage. He writes about a summer in 1962. He mentions a friend who came to visit from out of town. Her name was Margot. Margot, my mother repeated, as if trying to etch the name into her memory. Do you think that could be her? Could be. Let's keep going. We immersed ourselves in the journal, each new entry revealing more about my grandfather's life, and each detail painted a picture of a man I wished I had known better. There were stories of laughter, loss, and love, and with each turn of the page, I felt the weight of my family's history deepen. Suddenly, my mother gasped. Look at this! She pointed to a doodle in the margins, a simple drawing of a flower with the note, "For Margot, always blooming." A chill ran down my spine. What did that mean? Was this Margot someone special to him? My mind raced as I imagined the possibilities. If we find her, I said, we might understand why he kept her a secret. After hours of combing through the journal, we had gathered a handful of potential leads, names, locations, and even references to places my grandfather had frequented. Each piece of information felt like a breadcrumb leading us closer to the truth. We should start with the places he wrote about, my mother suggested. What if we visit them? Maybe we can find someone who remembers him or her. I loved that idea. The thought of retracing my grandfather's steps filled me with energy. Absolutely. Let's go to the park he mentioned first. It might be a long shot, but who knows? The next morning, we ventured to the local park where my grandfather had spent so many of his formative years. As we walked through the entrance, a sense of nostalgia washed over me. The tall trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the laughter of children echoed in the distance. I could almost picture my grandfather here, a young man full of dreams, perhaps with Margot by his side. We approached an old park bench that my grandfather had described in his journal. It looked just as he had written about it, weathered but sturdy. My mother sat down, her eyes scanning the area, while I took out my phone to search for any nearby historical societies or local groups. Maybe we can post something on social media, I suggested. There might be someone who remembers him or Margot. My mother smiled. That's a great idea. But what if we don't get any responses? I shrugged, trying to remain hopeful. Then we keep digging. Remember, we're not just looking for Margot. We're discovering who he was, and that's important too. We spent the afternoon talking to a few older residents who frequented the park, sharing snippets from the journal, and asking if they remembered my grandfather or anyone named Margot. Most of them shook their heads, offering only kind words of encouragement. It was disheartening but not entirely unexpected. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the park, I felt a sense of urgency building within me. What if we don't find her? What if this is all for nothing? I confided in my mother, my voice barely above a whisper. Then we'll still have uncovered a part of our history, she replied gently. This journey is about understanding him, and each step we take matters. I nodded, but the doubt lingered in the back of my mind. Just then, an older woman approached us, her gait slow but steady. She was carrying a small bag filled with freshly picked flowers. "Excuse me, dear," she said, her voice warm and inviting. "I couldn't help but overhear you talking about someone named Margot." My heart raced. "Yes. Do you know her?" The woman smiled softly, her eyes sparkling with recognition. "I might. She was a lovely girl, full of life. Used to come here often with a boy named... Was it Joe?" "Yes, Joe." They were quite the pair. I leaned in closer, my pulse quickening. "Do you remember anything else? Anything at all?" She thought for a moment, then continued. "She loved these flowers. Always picked them and wore them in her hair. I remember how bright she was, always smiling. Do you know where we can find her now?" My voice trembled with anticipation. The woman's smile faded slightly as she shook her head. "I'm afraid she moved away a long time ago, but I do remember her last name. It was Hargrove. Hargrove." The name echoed in my mind, a key that could unlock so many doors. "Thank you so much," I said, my heart swelling with gratitude. As the woman walked away, I turned to my mother, excitement bubbling within me. "Hargrove, this is a breakthrough. We have a last name." "Yes," she exclaimed, her eyes shining. "Now we can look her up. We're one step closer." As we walked back to the car, I couldn't help but wonder what Margot's life had been like after my grandfather. Would she be willing to share her story? What had happened between them? But all those questions faded into the background as I realized this journey was becoming more than just a search for answers. It was a discovery of who my grandfather was, and in turn, who I might become. It was a reminder that our past shapes us, that understanding our roots can illuminate the path ahead. What would you do if you found a connection to a family secret like this? Let me know below. We spent the rest of that afternoon poring over online resources, trying to find any trace of Margot Hargrove. I could feel the anticipation building between my mother and me. We were like detectives on the verge of solving a thrilling case, armed with nothing but a name and a shared determination to uncover the truth about my grandfather's life. Hours passed as we clicked through various search results, our excitement morphing into mild frustration as we came up empty. It felt like searching for a needle in a haystack, but I refused to give up. "Maybe we should try social media," I suggested, my fingers itching to type. "People love sharing stories about their families. Someone must know her, or maybe she has a presence online." My mother nodded, her face lighting up at the prospect. We created a post on a local community group page, describing Margot and her connection to my grandfather. "If anyone knows her or has any information, please reach out," I typed, my heart racing. Would this be the moment we finally connected with someone who could lead us to her? The next day, I woke up to a flurry of notifications. My heart raced as I opened my phone. There were comments and messages from people, some sharing similar names, others expressing sympathy for our quest. But one comment stood out. "I think I know her. I'll reach out and let her know you're looking for her." A rush of hope surged through me. "Mom, look!" I exclaimed, showing her the screen. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "This could be it. We might actually find her." We spent the day waiting, refreshing the post over and over, our excitement palpable. It felt like we were on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into the unknown. When that message finally came through, I almost didn't believe it. A woman named Clara had reached out, saying she knew Margot and had her phone number. After a quick exchange of messages, I found myself nervously dialing the number Clara had provided. My heart thudded in my chest as I listened to the phone ring. On the other end, an elderly voice answered, and I could hear the warmth radiating through her words. "Hello? Hi. Is this Margot Hargrove?" "Yes, it is. Who's calling?" I took a deep breath, my heart racing. "My name is Lily, and I'm the granddaughter of Robert Hawthorne. I was hoping to talk to you about my grandfather." There was a brief pause on the line, and I could hear the soft sounds of her breathing, as if she were absorbing the weight of my words. "Robert, I remember him well," she said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. He was quite the man. I felt a rush of emotions flood through me. Can you tell me about him? About your time together? Her voice softened, as if she were conjuring memories from a distant past. We were young and in love once, but life took us on different paths. As she spoke, I could hear the love in her voice, the way she cherished those moments from her youth. I thought about how much I wanted to understand not just who my grandfather was, but the choices he made and how they shaped our family. Margot, do you remember anything about a will? I asked cautiously. I've heard there might be some secrets he left behind. There was a long silence, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. Secrets, you say? Margot's voice was now laced with intrigue. I suppose every family has them, but I can't say what he left behind. All I know is that Robert was a man of his word. If he promised something, he kept it. I pressed further, eager for any hint of what might be buried in our family history. Do you think he would have wanted me to know about you or the things that happened between you two? Margot hesitated again, and I could almost hear her mind racing through the years. I think he would have wanted you to know your roots. Our pasts shape who we are, after all, but some stories are best told in person. Her words sent a shiver down my spine. It was like she was holding a key, a way into a world I had only begun to explore. Could we meet? I asked, my heart pounding. I'd love to hear your story, to learn more about him and what he was like. There was a brief silence. Then she agreed, her voice filled with warmth. Of course. Let's meet at the cafe on Maple Street. I'll be there. After we hung up, I felt a mixture of exhilaration and anxiety. Would I be ready for whatever truths Margot was about to share? Would I find out things I wasn't prepared to hear? I shared the news with my mother, and we both squealed with excitement. But beneath that excitement was a flicker of apprehension. The day of our meeting arrived, and I dressed carefully, wanting to look both respectful and approachable. As I approached the cafe, I spotted Margot sitting at a table by the window, her silver hair glinting in the sunlight. My heart raced as I walked over, unsure of what to expect. Lily? She smiled warmly, her eyes sparkling with a depth that hinted at a life well lived. Yes, Margot, I replied, feeling an instant connection. Thank you for meeting with me. We exchanged pleasantries, but it didn't take long before I steered the conversation back to my grandfather. What was he like? I asked, my voice slightly trembling with anticipation. Margot leaned forward, her eyes glistening with memories. He was passionate, full of life. We had so many dreams together. As she spoke, I could feel pieces of my family's history falling into place, each story she shared illuminating a new facet of my grandfather's character. It was as if I were standing at the precipice of a great revelation, ready to step into the past and uncover the truths that had long been hidden away. I remember the way he would talk about the stars, Margot said, a soft smile breaking across her face. He believed in chasing dreams, no matter how far-fetched they seemed. One time he convinced me to go stargazing with him in the middle of winter. We bundled up, got hot cocoa, and laid on the hood of his old truck, just watching the sky. He could name every constellation, every planet, and he had this infectious enthusiasm that made you feel like you could touch the stars, too. I leaned in, captivated by her words. Did he ever talk about his family? About us? Margot nodded, her expression turning somber. He loved you all dearly, but he was also a man of secrets. There were things he didn't share, things he kept close to his heart. Sometimes that was part of his charm, and other times it felt like a wall. What kind of secrets? I asked, a flutter of anxiety in my stomach. That's a story for another day, she replied, her eyes twinkling with mystery. But I will tell you this. He had plans, Lily, plans that he wanted to pass down to you, things he believed would help guide you. I couldn't help but feel a rush of emotion. My grandfather had always been a figure of inspiration to me, yet here I was, realizing how little I truly knew about him. I had spent years following his footsteps, trying to emulate his passion and drive without fully grasping the depth of his experiences. Did he ever mention anything about a will? I asked, my curiosity piquing. Margot took a moment, her gaze drifting to the bustling street outside. Only in passing. He once said he wanted to ensure that his legacy lived on, but he never got into details. Perhaps he thought it would be easier for you to learn through experience rather than through a piece of paper. Or maybe he didn't want to burden us with his past. I pondered aloud, a lump forming in my throat. Maybe, she agreed. But sometimes the burdens we carry become our greatest strengths. As the conversation continued, I found myself lost in memories I had never lived, yet felt deeply connected to. Margot spoke of my grandfather's love for art, his uncanny ability to draw people in with his stories, how he could make even the most mundane moments feel magical. I felt a growing urgency to uncover the mysteries he had left behind, the secrets he had woven into his life. When I finally left the cafe, my heart was heavy with nostalgia and hope. I walked through the streets, my mind racing with the possibility that my grandfather's will was not just a document, but a map of his dreams and aspirations for me. I thought about the funeral program I had found, the hidden message that had sparked this journey. What if there were more clues, more layers to peel back? Later that evening, I sat at my kitchen table. The funeral program spread out before me like a treasure map. The stark white paper seemed almost ethereal under the soft glow of my lamp. I turned it over in my hands, examining every inch of it, but there was nothing else to be found. My heart sank for a moment, but then I remembered Margot's words about the legacy my grandfather wanted to share. I decided then and there that I wouldn't give up. I would dig deeper, not just into the will, but into my grandfather's life. I began to jot down questions I had for Margot, things I wanted to know about the man who had shaped my family's history. The next few days blurred together as I pored over old family photos and documents, sifting through memories that felt both familiar and distant. I reached out to family members, asking them about their experiences with my grandfather, hoping to piece together a clearer picture of who he had been. I even began to search through his belongings, hoping to find something, anything that could lead me to the answers I sought. One afternoon, I found myself sitting in his old study, the air thick with the scent of aged wood and memories. I opened drawers, rifled through papers, and stared at the wall, where an old painting of the stars hung, a reminder of his passion. As I rummaged, something caught my eye. A small notebook tucked away at the back of a shelf. My heart raced as I pulled it out. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed with age. It felt heavy in my hands, as if it were brimming with secrets waiting to be uncovered. I flipped it open, my breath catching as I saw my grandfather's handwriting. The pages were filled with notes, sketches, and thoughts that ranged from mundane daily life to profound reflections on love, loss, and dreams. I couldn't believe it. This was a glimpse into his mind, a treasure trove of his thoughts. As I read through the pages, one entry stood out to me. It was dated just a few months before his passing. I want Lily to know that life is a tapestry woven with love and dreams. No matter what happens, she must follow her heart. The world is vast, and she is capable of so much more than she realizes. Tears filled my eyes. This was more than just a note. It was a heartfelt message meant for me, a guiding light through the uncertainty of my future. I closed the notebook, feeling an overwhelming sense of connection to him. I realized that perhaps the will was not the only thing he wanted to pass down. Perhaps the true legacy he left was the wisdom embedded in every word he had written. With renewed determination, I made a plan. I would take this notebook and the lessons it contained and forge ahead, not just to discover the will, but to embrace the life my grandfather had envisioned for me. I felt ready to stand up and confront whatever lay ahead, knowing that I was not alone. I was armed with his words, his dreams, and the promise of the adventures yet to come. As I stood there, holding my grandfather's notebook close to my heart, I could almost feel him beside me, urging me forward. It was as if his spirit was igniting a fire within me, a call to action that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the moment, allowing the memories of his laughter and his steadfast belief in me to wash over me like a comforting embrace. It was time to dig deeper, to uncover the truths he had concealed, not only about the will, but about the life lessons he had imparted through the years. The funeral had been a whirlwind of emotion, and now, amidst the grief, I felt a flicker of excitement. The hidden will was a puzzle, and I was ready to piece it together. I could almost hear my grandfather's voice encouraging me. his wisdom echoing in my mind. I glanced around at the familiar faces, friends and family who had gathered to remember him. They were all part of this tapestry he had woven, and now I realized I needed to involve them in my quest, not as mere spectators, but as allies in this journey. That evening, after the guests had departed and silence enveloped the house, I called my closest friends, Sarah and Emily. They had known my grandfather just as I had, and I felt they would understand the weight of this discovery. I shared the story of the hidden will and the notebook with them, detailing my plans to explore every nook and cranny of his life. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and soon we were brainstorming where to start. "We could check the attic," Sarah suggested. "I remember your grandfather had some old trunks up there that he never let anyone touch." "That's a great idea," I replied, feeling a surge of hope. He always said he kept his treasures hidden, but maybe he meant more than just physical things. We agreed to meet the next day, and as I hung up the phone, I felt a swell of gratitude for their unwavering support. They were my sisters in this journey, and together we would unearth the legacy my grandfather had left behind. The next morning, the sun rose with a warmth that felt like a new beginning. I could hardly contain my excitement as I prepared to head to my grandfather's house. The attic had always held an air of mystery for me, a place filled with dusty memories and forgotten stories. As we arrived, the familiar scent of old wood and cedar filled the air, and I couldn't help but smile at the memories it brought back. "All right, let's see what secrets are hiding up here," Emily said, her voice laced with anticipation. We climbed the rickety stairs, each creak echoing in the stillness. The attic was dimly lit, illuminated only by a small window that let in slivers of sunlight. Dust particles danced in the air, swirling like tiny fairies, and I felt a sense of reverence as I stepped inside. We began to sift through boxes, each one filled with relics of my grandfather's life. Old photographs, dusty books, and trinkets from his travels filled the space. Each item sparked memories, and as we shared stories, I felt a deeper connection to him. It was as if he was guiding us, nudging us toward something significant. Hours passed as we dug through the clutter, and just when I was beginning to feel a sense of defeat, I spotted an old trunk tucked away in the corner. It was worn and weathered, but something about it felt special. My heart raced as I approached, and I motioned for Sarah and Emily to come over. "Help me open this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Together, we heaved the heavy lid, and it creaked open to reveal a treasure trove of memories. Inside were countless letters, photographs, and mementos. My grandfather had chronicled his life in a way I had never imagined. "Look at this!" Sarah exclaimed, pulling out a bundle of letters tied with string. "These look like they're from Grandma." I reached for them, my heart pounding as I carefully untied the string. Each letter was filled with love, stories of their early years together, dreams of the future, and the challenges they had faced. It was a beautiful reminder of the love that had built our family, and it made me realize that the will might be just as much about the heart as it was about material things. As we continued to explore, we uncovered more letters, each revealing different facets of my grandfather's life. There was one addressed to me, dated years ago, and I felt a mixture of curiosity and nostalgia as I opened it. Inside, he had written words of encouragement and advice, just as he had in the notebook. "I want you to always remember that life is an adventure," he had penned. "Follow your passions, and never let fear dictate your path." Those words resonated deeply with me, echoing the sentiments I had discovered before. I realized that my grandfather had left behind not only a will, but also a roadmap for navigating life. I felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that I was not just searching for his possessions, but uncovering the very essence of who he was. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the attic, I turned to Sarah and Emily, my heart full. "I think we're on the right track," I said. "There's so much more to discover, and I feel like we're getting closer to understanding him and what he wanted for me." We all agreed that this journey was about more than just the will. It was about embracing his legacy and uncovering the love and wisdom he had woven into every aspect of his life. Together, we would continue this quest, fueled by the belief that every piece of the puzzle was a step closer to honoring his memory and fulfilling his dreams for me. As the last rays of the sun slipped away, we gathered around the small table set up in the corner of the attic, its surface cluttered with old books and forgotten trinkets. The atmosphere felt charged, as if the very air was whispering secrets from the past. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the cusp of something monumental. "What do you think he meant by embracing his legacy?" Emily asked, her brows furrowing in thought. I pondered for a moment, looking around at the artifacts that surrounded us. They weren't just objects. They were pieces of his life, each telling a story waiting to be uncovered. "I think it means carrying forward his values, his spirit," I replied thoughtfully. "He always encouraged us to be curious, to explore the world around us. I feel like he wanted me to do just that, to not only remember him, but also to live fully, to take risks." Sarah nodded, her eyes shining with understanding. "And maybe the will is just a part of that. It's not just about what we inherit, but what we choose to do with it." With a newfound determination, we decided to comb through the attic one last time that evening. It was getting late, but I could feel a sense of urgency within me. I wanted to uncover every last detail, every last whisper of his wisdom. We rummaged through boxes, pulling out photographs, letters, and old toys from my childhood. Each item was a window into his world, and with each discovery, I felt more connected to him. "Look at this," Emily exclaimed, holding up a faded photo of my grandfather standing next to a vintage car. He looked so young and full of life, a mischievous grin spread across his face. He had such a zest for life, didn't he? I couldn't help but smile, my heart swelling with affection. He really did. He taught me to find joy in the little things. As I sifted through more boxes, I came across an old scrapbook. It was filled with newspaper clippings, mementos, and even some of his sketches. I felt like I was peeling back layers of his life, each page revealing another facet of his personality. "This is amazing," I said, turning the pages carefully. He was so talented. The more we explored, the more I realized how much he had poured into everything he did. He had taken risks in his career, pursued his passions, and never let setbacks define him. It was as if he had lived 1,000 lives in one, and I was just beginning to tap into that legacy. Suddenly, I noticed something tucked between the pages of the scrapbook. It was a small envelope, yellowed with age and sealed tightly. My heart raced as I carefully opened it, revealing a letter written in his familiar cursive. "To my beloved family," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I've moved on to my next adventure. But don't be sad. I want you to celebrate my life, just as I celebrated yours." Tears welled in my eyes as I continued to read. He expressed his love for us, shared memories of our times together, and imparted his hopes for each of us. "Never forget to chase your dreams and to support one another," he wrote. "Family is everything, and I have faith in each of you to create a life full of love and joy." The letter felt like a warm embrace from beyond the grave. It was as if he was speaking directly to me, urging me to hold on to the values he had instilled in us. I looked up at Sarah and Emily, who were equally moved by the words. "He really believed in us," I said, my voice trembling. "He wanted us to live boldly." As the night deepened and the attic grew dim, I placed the letter back in the envelope and took a moment to reflect. I realized that this journey was far from over. The will might still be hidden, but what I had discovered was worth more than any material possession. My grandfather's spirit, his love, and his legacy were alive in me, and in the choices I would make moving forward. "Let's take a break for now," I suggested, feeling a sense of contentment wash over me. "We can regroup tomorrow and continue our search." We agreed and carefully packed everything back into the boxes, each item now feeling even more precious. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about all that had transpired. The attic, once just a dusty space filled with forgotten memories, had transformed into a treasure trove of my grandfather's life lessons. I felt his presence surrounding me, guiding me, encouraging me to dig deeper, not just for the will, but for the very essence of who he was. The next day dawned bright and clear, a fitting backdrop for what I hoped would be another fruitful day. We met in the kitchen, cups of coffee in hand, our faces still carrying the light of the discoveries we'd made. "So, what's the game plan?" Sarah asked, her excitement palpable. "Let's focus on the funeral program," I suggested. "It's possible there's more hidden in there than we realized." We gathered around the table, spreading out the funeral program along with the notebook and the letter. Every detail felt important, like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be connected. As we discussed the significance of the program, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation building inside me. What secrets lay hidden within those pages? What final words did my grandfather want to share? And how could they illuminate the path ahead? As we brainstormed, I realized that this journey had become a beautiful tapestry woven from love, memories, and the undying spirit of my grandfather. With each step we took, I felt stronger, more empowered to embrace the adventure of life that he had always encouraged. And as I looked at my friends, my heart swelled with gratitude. We were not just uncovering a will, we were rediscovering a legacy, and I was ready to honor it in every way I could. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us as we leaned over the table, our eyes scanning the funeral program. There was an undeniable energy in the room, a spark ignited by the promise of what we might uncover. I picked up the program, feeling the smooth texture of the paper beneath my fingers, and began to read aloud the words printed on the front. In loving memory of James Anderson. The name hung in the air, a reminder of the man who had shaped so much of my life. "Okay, let's break it down," I said, my voice steady, though my heart raced. "We need to look closely at every single detail. This program isn't just a tribute. It could be a map to something greater." Sarah nodded, her eyes wide with anticipation. "What about the order of the service? Maybe there's something in the way it's laid out?" "Right," I exclaimed, flipping it open to the first page. "Let's start there." We took turns reading sections, dissecting every part of the service from the opening hymn to the eulogy. I noticed that my grandfather had chosen a specific song that was significant to our family. It was the same song my parents had danced to at their wedding. My heart fluttered at the memory. "Do you think he picked that song on purpose?" Sarah asked. I smiled softly, already knowing the answer. Absolutely. He was always one for symbolism. It's like he was reminding us of love and connection, even in his absence. Moving deeper into the program, we stumbled upon the acknowledgments section, where my grandfather had written a personal note of gratitude to everyone who had supported him throughout his life. Reading the names brought a flood of memories, some sweet, others bittersweet. I could almost hear his voice in my head, sharing stories about each of these individuals. Then, something caught my eye. There, printed in the bottom corner, was a tiny emblem, a family crest that had been passed down for generations. I hadn't thought much of it until now, but my grandfather had always been proud of our heritage. What if this means something? I mused aloud. "Could be a clue," Sarah said thoughtfully. "Maybe there's something tied to the crest or the family history that he wanted you to discover." With renewed focus, I began to recall the stories he used to tell about our ancestors. He often spoke of a hidden treasure that had once belonged to our great-great-grandfather, a man who had come to America with nothing but the clothes on his back. My mind raced with possibilities. Could there be more to this crest than just a symbol of our family? We decided to dig further into the history of the crest. After a few moments of searching, I pulled out my laptop and began typing. Let's look up its origins and see if there's any connection to my grandfather's wishes. As we sifted through the information, a picture began to emerge, a tale of bravery, love, and sacrifice. Our ancestors had fought for their dreams, had hidden treasures of their own, both literal and metaphorical. I felt a deep sense of pride swelling in my chest. This wasn't just about uncovering a will. It was about understanding who we were and where we came from. After a while, my fingers paused over the keyboard, and I turned back to my friends. What if my grandfather wanted me to find this? Maybe the will isn't just about the material things he left behind. What if it's about the lessons he learned and the wisdom he gained through our family's struggles? Sarah leaned back in her chair, her eyes sparkling. That makes perfect sense. He always said that family is the greatest treasure of all. Just then, a soft rustle from the funeral program caught my attention. I flipped the pages again, hoping to find something I might have missed. As I turned to the back, I discovered a small envelope tucked between the last page and the cover. My heart raced as I carefully pulled it out, feeling the weight of potential secrets contained within. This wasn't here before, was it? I asked, holding the envelope up for everyone to see. Nope, Sarah replied, her excitement palpable. It's definitely new. I took a deep breath and opened the envelope, revealing a folded piece of paper inside. Carefully, I pulled it out and unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakable. My grandfather's distinct cursive, filled with warmth and care. As I began to read, my voice trembled slightly with emotion. My dearest family, if you are reading this, it means I have left this world, but I want you to know that my love remains with you always. My eyes welled up with tears, but I pressed on, my heart swelling with love for the man who had shaped so much of my life. The note continued with a series of reflections on family, love, and the importance of carrying forward our shared legacy. He wrote about the value of memories and the bonds that connect us, urging me to embrace life and all its challenges with courage. And then, just as I thought I was prepared for what came next, he mentioned the treasure, the family heirloom that had been passed down through generations, something that held the key to our ancestry and his true wishes for the future. Wait, what? He's talking about an heirloom? I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. The room fell silent as we absorbed his words. The air was thick with anticipation and emotion. It was as if my grandfather was speaking directly to me, guiding me toward what I needed to do next. With each line I read, it became clearer that this was more than just a letter. It was a final gift, an invitation to continue our family's legacy and seek out our roots. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just searching for a will. I was embarking on a quest to uncover my family's history, to understand the depths of love and connection that had been woven into my very existence. I looked up at Sarah and Jess, my heart filled with determination. We have to find this heirloom. It's not just a piece of jewelry or a trinket. It's a part of us, a part of our story. They nodded, sharing in my resolve. I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together, bound by the love of a man who wanted us to always remember where we came from and to honor the journey that had brought us to this moment. It was a legacy worth fighting for, and I was ready to embrace every twist and turn that awaited us. As I stood there, flanked by Sarah and Jess, the weight of my grandfather's letter settled in my heart like a warm embrace. It wasn't just a task anymore. It was a mission fueled by love, a love that transcended time and space. The heirloom was not merely an object, but a connection to our past, a thread that tied us to our ancestors and their stories. I felt a fire ignite within me, a fierce desire to uncover the layers of history that shaped our family. We spent the next few days poring over old family albums, letters, and photographs. Each piece we uncovered added a new dimension to our understanding of who we were. It was fascinating to see the faces of relatives I'd never met, to read their handwritten notes filled with joy, sorrow, and everything in between. I found myself feeling closer to them than I had ever imagined possible. As we dug deeper, I uncovered a family tree that branched out in unexpected directions. There were stories of triumph and tragedy, of love lost and found, of struggles that tested our ancestors' resolve. I learned about my great-grandmother, who had immigrated to this country with nothing but hope, and my great-uncle, who had fought bravely in a war that changed the course of history. Each story was a testament to resilience, an echo of the dreams that once fueled my family. But it wasn't just the stories that captivated me. It was the realization that these individuals had lived, breathed, and fought for their place in the world, just as I was doing now. It was a humbling experience, and it filled me with gratitude for the sacrifices they made. I remember one night, as we sat huddled around the dining table, the glow of the lamp illuminating our faces, I turned to Sarah and Jess, my heart swelling with emotion. "Can you believe we're a part of all this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. These people lived, loved, and dreamed. Their stories are part of us. They nodded, their eyes reflecting the same realization. It was like we were weaving our own tapestry, stitching together the past with the present, creating a narrative that would carry us into the future. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility, not just to find the heirloom, but to honor the legacy that had been entrusted to us. Then came the breakthrough. One afternoon, while flipping through a particularly old album, I stumbled upon a photograph of a woman wearing a beautiful necklace that sparkled even in black and white. I gasped, my heart racing. "This is it. This has to be the heirloom." I pointed at the image, my fingers trembling with excitement. Sarah leaned in closer, her brows furrowed in concentration. "Look at the inscription on the back," she said, gently flipping the photo. I squinted to read the faint script, my heart pounding in anticipation. It read, "To my dearest daughter, may this guide you through life." The words struck me like a bolt of lightning. It was a message of love, one that resonated with my own journey. I felt a profound connection to this woman I had never met, but who had somehow passed down her strength through generations. "We have to find this necklace," I declared, determination coursing through me. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of excitement and investigation. We reached out to distant relatives, scoured antique shops, and searched online forums. Each lead brought us closer, yet there were moments of frustration and disappointment. I remember one particularly tough day when I felt like giving up. I sat on my bed, surrounded by a sea of papers and photographs, feeling overwhelmed. "What if we never find it?" I asked Jess, my voice barely a whisper. "What if we've built this up in our minds and it doesn't even exist anymore?" Jess sat beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder. "But what if it does exist? What if it's waiting for us to find it?" Her words were a balm to my spirit, reigniting my hope. It was true. This journey was about more than just the necklace. It was about connection, love, and understanding our place in the world. Finally, one crisp Saturday morning, we received a call from a small antique shop in a neighboring town. The shopkeeper had heard about our quest and believed they had something that might be of interest to us. My heart raced as we drove to the shop, anticipation bubbling over. Would this be it? The moment we had been waiting for? When we arrived, the shop was quaint, filled with the scent of aged wood and history. The shopkeeper, a kind elderly woman, greeted us with a warm smile. "I believe you're searching for something special," she said, leading us to a glass case. My heart skipped a beat as I beheld a stunning necklace, a delicate gold chain with a sparkling pendant that resembled the one from the photograph. Trembling with excitement, I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the cool metal. "Is this—" I could barely finish my sentence. The shopkeeper nodded, a knowing smile on her face. "Yes, it was brought in by a family who wanted it to find its way back home." Tears welled in my eyes as I held the necklace in my hands, feeling a surge of connection to the women who had worn it before me. I could almost hear my grandfather's voice whispering in my ear, guiding me to this moment. I looked at Sarah and Jess, their faces reflecting the same awe I felt. "We found it," I whispered, my voice breaking with emotion. As I clasped the necklace around my neck, I felt a sense of completion wash over me. This wasn't just an heirloom. It was a symbol of our journey, of the love that had guided us, and of the legacy we would continue. I turned to my friends, my heart full. What does this mean for us now? How do we honor this legacy moving forward? In that moment, surrounded by the echoes of our ancestors, I realized that the stories we uncovered would not end here. They would live on through us, in the stories we tell, the love we share, and the memories we create. This journey had transformed us, and I knew we would carry it forward together. As I looked at the necklace, shimmering against my heart, I felt a deep sense of peace. The quest for the heirloom had not only brought us closer to our past, but it also forged an unbreakable bond between us. I was no longer just a daughter or a granddaughter. I was a keeper of our family's story, and I couldn't wait to see how it would unfold. So, I ask you now, have you ever embarked on a journey to uncover your own family's history? What treasures did you find? Let me know below.